Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we have the Cubs going out with a whimper. What does the Major League Baseball offseason hold for the Chicago teams? The Bears on a bye, and finally, it is hockey season. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You could see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So all of those, young names that the Blackhawks were hyping up during the preseason and the offseason that didn't actually make the squad, you can see them at Rockford. So head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself some tickets, hat, shirt, jersey, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, it is our bye week in week 5 for the NFL.
I hate it. Too dang early.
I agree. It's I don't understand why they just can't have more teams on a bye and have a smaller window of when teams have buys, because having a bye this early in the season is just really pointless. You haven't really hit the wall yet where you sort of need a break. You're just starting to get into the groove of the season starting. And then the teams that have the bye this early, it really puts a damper on them because they don't get that mid-season break. It's just like a early break.
I think the most ideal times for a bye week are like between weeks 7 and 10. I think those are the best times for a bye week, but doesn't work out that way for everyone.
Yeah, I don't know how they choose who gets a bye when, but it is frustrating when your team gets the bye super early. That should be reserved for the Lions and Tennessee or somebody that I don't care about.
This is a team that is going to be working really hard. The defense plays really hard, obviously. You got a lot of young guys here, and man, they're just going to be really tired by the time the season's over. And think about it, the second half of the season is really when a lot of the challenging moments come in. So, you're going to be playing week after week when you have to play all those games against, the division and some other good opponents. So, yeah, it's just not the most ideal timing, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, and usually if you get a later bye, it's when your players are a little more banged up. And, I'm not talking about injury where, a player's injured in the bye, it works perfectly because then they don't miss as much time. I'm just talking about the normal aches and pains and bumps and bruises that you get playing the game. It's nicer to have that bye when it's a later in the season and you can kind of recuperate a little more and be ready and more refreshed for the stretch run. But like you said, the schedule makers, they control everything, and I have no say. I just I will take the opportunity to have a Sunday off in the middle of the season.
Yeah, there you go.
So we've got baseball and hockey. What do you want to talk about first?
Why don't we talk hockey first? Because I think we have a lot of thoughts about baseball.
Oh yeah, a whole lot of thoughts. Hockey. The NHL season has started. The Blackhawks, we're recording this on Saturday night. They are in the second period of the game against the Blues. And, I didn't really know what to expect because it has been an absolute circus between the off season, the moves that they made, the moves they didn't make as far as,
I was going to say, or lack thereof.
yeah, the not addressing the most glaring holes on the team, and just the whole Corey Crawford circus where nobody knew where he was, exactly what was wrong, where, when he's coming back. And there was just a lot of questions, and honestly, the preseason didn't look so good for the Blackhawks.
No, it didn't. I didn't really expect it to go that well for the Blackhawks. I mean, I really don't take much stock into preseason, but you did see a lot of glaring holes on this squad, and you can clearly tell that a lot of the prospects that the Hawks do have, they're just not ready yet. Some are, some are up, like Yokoharu is up, but you could clearly tell guys like Victor Edgzel were not ready. And then you still had the same old problems with the guys that have been around. And you didn't get much promise from Cam Ward in the preseason either. And he's going to be the guy until Corey Crawford comes back, unless they say, hey, Kellen Dahlia, you get in there and you play some games. So, yeah, I mean, the expectations were not very high, but you still watch with some frustration. You know what I mean? Even though the expectations this year weren't incredibly high.
I just want to point out that the Ice Hogs the other night got stonewalled by JF Berube.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. Because they were playing Cleveland,
Yeah.
right? Cleveland Monsters. Yeah. That's who he's with. Yeah.
It's funny, the one good game he plays.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because he was in the game against the Blackhawks for the Blue Jackets when the Blue Jackets basically just dressed the Cleveland Monsters, and JF Berube came in. I'm like, oh, at least he's still playing.
Yeah.
But then he stonewalled the Ice Hogs.
But so I really didn't know what to expect, and a Twitter person that I follow, it was right after the Cubs lost, which we'll talk about in the playoffs. Well, the whatever, I don't like to call it playoffs, but after the Cubs lost and were out, he just posted, Cubs fans that are just tuning into hockey, here's what to expect. The good players, the young players that they hyped up so much are playing for Rockford, and this team doesn't look very good. and
Well,
honestly, I just didn't know what to expect because I didn't really watch any of the preseason games because baseball was on, football was on. I just sort of I wanted to watch games that counted.
yeah, preseason hockey is blah.
And I mean, actually, like basketball, hockey, their off seasons are pretty short because of the length of the season. But baseball just seems, I guess baseball's pretty short too, but baseball just seems you have that whole winter off, and it's like a sign of spring and that you're going to get nicer weather when pitchers and catchers report. You're like, oh, that spring is coming. And with hockey, it's right when football season is just heating up, and baseball season is, the playoffs are about to start. It catches you off guard a little bit, but the Blackhawks had their first game. They're in their second, and I still don't know what to make of this team. There's a lot of things that are going well and better than I expected, but they still aren't playing to what I guess I would hope.
Well, I think the biggest glaring problem is the one that we all expected, and that's the defense, particularly the turnovers. The turnovers are brutal. In the first game and in this game against the Blues, they may go 2-0. We're recording in the middle of this game. They may go 1-1, but regardless, turnovers are terrible. It's just absolutely terrible. And boy, Brent Seabrook has just had some dog turd turnovers.
Yeah, the turnovers. I mean, I was taking notes of things I wanted to talk about, and the turnovers were towards the top of my list. They've been brutal. Um, I I don't understand it because it's not like it's coming from all young players. It's 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 like an epidemic, and this team defensively is not good enough to overcome all of those. And defensively, you're right. There's just lapses. Even in this game, you know, the Blues should be up by a couple of goals because,
Oh, absolutely.
you know, it's like, all right, they think they're worse they're supposed to be. And the guy with the puck is, boxed in. They've got the goal protected, but nobody watches for a guy that's looping around the back for like a one-timer. Like, it just, how many times does that have to happen before you go, oh, hey, let me skate up and take that player out?
Yeah, there's also, I think, there's also a real problem with just passing in general because we've seen a lot of failures to clear the puck. We saw it tonight. We saw it in the first game. And again, that was a problem last year, but you're seeing it more again this year. And I just feel like once again that not only is the passing not great, but the handling is not always so great. You know what I mean? They'll get the puck, and instead of just shooting it, they'll try to do a little deke, and then they'll lose the puck instead of just firing it.
Yeah, I mean, in this game, Saad made a really good defensive play and then nearly turned it over right in front of the goalie, wide open, when he was trying to make a pass behind the net. And it should have been a simple pass off the boards. And, it's like one good step forward and then one bad step back.
Yeah, this is something that Joe Quenneville is really going to have to buckle down. And he's probably trying to not tear his hair out from behind the bench watching that, but he's got his work cut out for him for that. These are smart players. These are players that have been good for a long time. And we know that Brent Seabrook and Duncan Keith are probably never going to be the same with their speed and physical ability, but you still got to have the fundamentals, and how good those players can be with fundamentals. But right now there's just a lot of sloppiness. You're going to expect some sloppiness from some of the youngsters. We all know that. It's part of the game, but you need your veterans to really play good fundamental hockey. And the defense as a whole, you're not seeing that. You're seeing some nice things from the kid Yoki Haru. He made this fantastic defensive play on Vladimir Tarasenko tonight. He had the puck, he was coming in, and Vladimir Tarasenko is one of the hardest people to defend. And he shut him down like he was a veteran cornerback in football. Like, it was great. And that was a 19-year-old kid doing that. But it's going to have to all come together. You're going to have to be smarter. You're going to have to turn the puck over less. And you're going to have to be where the guys are. You can't keep leaving these guys wide open.
Two things. One is anytime somebody says fundamentals, I just giggle because I don't know if you've ever watched the show Futurama. There's an episode where they go to this planet with like these like giant women, and they're laughing about their basketball league, and they're like, well, what we lack in being able to dunk, we make up for in fundamentals. And all the guys just start laughing. And then the leader comes in and is like, why are they laughing? They're laughing at our basketball league. Well, did you explain to them about the fundamentals?
I know what you're talking about.
And the other thing is looking at the box score from the first game, and I watched, but I guess I just really wasn't looking for it. But just looking at the box score, is Duncan Keith had almost 25 minutes of ice time, and we talked about that before, and I don't know if that's going to be something that, as the young defensemen get a little less green, that Quenneville will wind down that time and increase other guys, or if this is just what he's going to do because he doesn't trust young defensemen. But this team can't win and have Duncan Keith play 25 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's going to change over the season. At least I hope it does. I really do.
And you're right. It's just I hate beating up on Duncan Keith because of what he's meant to this organization. But it's 2018, and we don't want to turn this team into the Red Wings, where
Right.
they sink down low, and then when you think they might turn it around, they sink even lower.
Yeah, no, I mean, we talked about this before. We've made these comparisons to the Red Wings. We don't want that to happen. I think as you see some of these young defensemen that they do have come along, you'll probably see that ice time go down. But, for the time being, Q's probably going to try to trust his veterans here. But yeah,
But I mean, to talk about the good things that I was surprised by, not surprised, I'm just very happy about. It looks like Jonathan Taves is back to being Jonathan Taves.
he looks great. He's got a spring in his step. He looks like he's 4 or 5 years younger right now. I think that was the thing I wanted to talk about the most about the Hawks, is that he looks great.
It makes you wonder if there was something physically wrong with him that, whether it was the back or if it was lingering concussion symptoms or something else, because it's just like it's night and day, which just makes you think, somebody doesn't usually get older. Like, once they're in the prime of their career, they don't get older and then start getting better. It just makes me think that he wasn't 100% physically healthy, and he's rectified that and is now healthy, because his game looks like it did a couple of years ago, and he's playing fantastic.
I always thought to myself that there was something physically there. Like you said, it was either the back or the concussion, but I'm starting to think it was physical. And here's the thing. Everyone talked about, oh, Jonathan Toews looks bad. Jonathan Toews looks bad. He looks bad for his contract because he's making a lot of money, which he rightfully deserved when he got that money. Rightfully deserved. But you look at the numbers the past few years, they ain't eye-popping, but they're respectable. I mean, last year, 20 goals, 32 assists, 52 points. That's not terrible. It's not what he was in his prime by any means, but that's not awful.
No, and he's got that line playing really well. Even when they're not scoring, they're putting pressure on. I like that line that he's on. So that's a definite plus, and bodes well for the Blackhawks, performing well during the season.
Hey, he scores a few more goals, he'll reach 300. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, he's got 293 career goals, 383 assists. So, no, this season could see him reach a few milestones. 300 goals, 400 assists.
That's a good mark. That's a damn good mark.
Yeah. I mean, look at in prime Jonathan Toews. People say, "Oh, was he ever really that good?" Well, 2010, 2011, 32 goals, 44 assists, 76 points. He had 34 goals and 35 assists in 0809. He's had some very good seasons, and he was pretty consistent too. From 14 to 16, he scored exactly 28 goals, and the point totals were 68, 66, and 58 from 14 to 16. He was putting up some consistently good numbers. The last few years, 21-32 last year, the year before that, 21-37. So, yeah, again, a little drop in the numbers, but, overall, still pretty respectable. If he could have a season this year where he scores like 65 points, 25, 28 goals, and, nearly 40 assists, I think we'd gladly take that.
Yeah, I think we would. What else? DeBrincat, he looks really good.
That wrister is nasty.
Yeah, Kane has looked good. So you're seeing some of the big stars actually start to do something and play well at the same time. I mean, I know I'm not going to say this is concerning because we're 1.5 games into an 82 game season, but Nick Schmaltz hasn't looked that good. And I think we all thought he was going to take a big step forward after what he did last year.
I still think he will. I'm not going to get concerned over not even 2 games yet with him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not concerned. I'm just, you know, we're a game and a half in and not looking so hot. And Sod hasn't really done anything yet either. But I think both of those guys are, one's going to bounce back, one's going to continue the trajectory. So I think this season they're going to be able to score some goals. It's just going to be, can they outpace, what the other team is doing? It's going to be higher scoring games than we've been used to with the Blackhawks over the last few years, I think.
You look at this team and you say, if you had Keith and Seabrook in their prime, just take this team exactly how it is, and you have Keith Seabrook in their prime and Corey Crawford healthy, that's a cup contender right there. Maybe not a cup favorite, but a cup contender. Wouldn't you agree?
I mean, if you have a healthy Seabrook and Keith, that's in their prime healthy. That's a hell of a pairing. You can pretty much neutralize any line you want to with that pairing. So yeah, absolutely. And then Corey Crawford, healthy and in his prime, is arguably a top 4 goalie.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing is that, like you said, this team can score goals. I just think that it's going to be a bit lopsided. So it's going to be very top heavy in the goal scoring because I don't think there's that much depth on this team. Like, you're not going to see the lower lines score that much. But if you have Taves playing at the level that he has for many years, Kane playing at his normal Kane level, DeBrincat, Schmaltz doing their thing, plus you add, Keith and Seabrook, despite their defensive struggles, they can score you goals. And Artem Anisimov is a pretty good goal scorer, so you can get a decent number of goals from there, even if there isn't a lot of scoring depth. It's just, don't expect the goals to be nice and spread out like they were a few years ago when they were winning cups. Because that was one of the really nice things that those Hawks teams that won the cups did, is that everything was just so spread out nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that we talked about, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, that's continuing on as well, is the difficulty in winning face-offs. If you look at the numbers so far, Anisimov is about even 50-50. Taves is, up there. Everybody else is just abysmal. Can't win face-offs.
Yeah, that's another problem. We talked about it on this show before, but that's going to be an issue. I don't see that just writing itself.
No, that's going to be something that plagues them all season.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's, their stats to show how important it is to winning faceoffs. I guess growing up, it never seemed like it was annoying that you didn't win, but it never seemed like it was impacting the game at all, not winning the faceoffs. But now, there's metrics to show how important winning faceoffs is, and the Blackhawks just need to do a better job. You can't expect Jonathan Taves to be the only guy on the team that can win faceoffs.
Well, especially if you're on special teams, you're either trying to kill off a penalty or you're on the power play. That's when faceoffs matter the most.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, we're so early in this season, and after this Cubs season, I'm not going to ever say it's early. Losses don't matter, but every game matters. But we're really early. I'm not going to make any judgments. I'm just going to, sort of just say what I'm seeing so far. And once we get maybe 20 games into the season, we can start looking for patterns and projections for the season. I think that's fair.
Yeah, for sure. Um, One last play I really wanted to talk about was Cam Ward. He's let in some really bad goals, but he's also made some pretty dang impressive saves. I just really want some consistency.
That's the issue with, if you look, goalie play in general is over the last decade has just been much better because these young goalies are just trained robotically, you know what to do on different types of shots, and it's almost like muscle memory, uh and it's what guys are going to do, and you don't have these goalies anymore that are going to you know do crazy unorthodox type blocks. It everybody drops onto the same style, and it's very robotic. So you expect any NHL caliber goalie to be able to put some stone walls in every once in a while. Just it's just how they're trained. But uh, it's the consistency that's the difficult part, and that's the mark of a good goalie is the consistency. Corey Crawford night in, night out. Every once in a while he'll let a stinker in, but the guy is super consistent, and that's what you see with top goalies. We've had over the last several years, we've had goalies that were like, oh, look at that. They had a really nice game. Then they followed up with a stinker. I think last year was just the epitome of that is I think every young goalie that they had covering for Corey Crawford had at least one really good game, but then it was followed up by, a stinky game or, one good period, one bad period. It's just up and down, and you can't rely on them, consistently. Um, and that's what you're seeing now with Cam Ward is, preseason bad. The first period or so of game one against a terrible team. The team that they were playing game one could be one of the worst teams in hockey, and the Blackhawks had to go into overtime to win. But here they are with a good Blues team, and they're playing tough. So who knows?
Yeah, you look at the first game that Cam Ward had. It looked like he was going to be pulled in the first quarter, the first period, I should say. And then periods 2 and 3, he was making some great saves, didn't allow another goal. He looked great. And then in today's game, left in a real bad one. I think it was the Blues' first goal. Yeah, it was a shot from the point. He saw it all the way, but he couldn't grab it. Really soft one there. But the Hawks had so many turnovers in front of their net, and Cam Ward was able to make some big stops there. So, it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah, Corey Crawford can't come back soon enough. And didn't they say something like October 18th?
They said mid-October was the goal.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but
I'm not holding my breath. But I think if I remember correctly, I think I heard Quenneville say that they're targeting October 18th for him to be back.
All right, then. I'm not really going to say we should fully trust that. We don't really know, but if he could come back by then, that'd be great. If he's fully ready. Obviously his health is the first concern here, but if he's healthy, ready to go, that would be huge.
Yeah, that really changes the trajectory of this team. It answers a lot of questions, and it masks a lot of your defensive deficiencies because of what a good goaltender he is. But that's a big if he's healthy. There's going to be a lot of rust factor because the guy hasn't played in a long time.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. We can't expect him to be top notch right when he comes back.
He hasn't played hockey at all in 2018, and he'll be coming back, just a few days before Halloween. So that's a lot of rust to shake off.
It is, but hey, if he's going to shake off rust and in real NHL games, then that could hopefully help him get back to his normal self as soon as possible. Because we're going to need him. I got to look at the schedule here and kind of see what's coming up. So yeah, if it is the 18th, that's a home game against the Coyotes. So, it'd be nice to come back during an opponent that's not that great.
And a home game.
Yeah, and a home game. Yeah, that does help too. So yeah, I'm looking at man, we play St. Louis twice because we play them tonight, then we got to play them a week from today at home, and then the home opener is tomorrow against the Leafs. So they got to turn right around and go back to the United Center. Luckily, it's from St. Louis to Chicago. It's not like Vancouver to Chicago, but yeah, it's 3 games in 4 days.
Yeah, get those out of the way early.
Then everything's pretty spread out. Then they don't play again after Sunday. They play in Minnesota Thursday and the St. Louis on Saturday. Then they don't play again till the 18th. And then it's every other day, basically. And then you have back-to-backs on the last weekend of October. So things are a wee bit more spread out as it goes on. But yeah, it's always tough to play 3 games in 4 days in hockey.
Yeah, and as a fan, I usually like the hockey schedule, the breakup, because baseball, it's like I love baseball, but you never get a break. It's like, you come home from work and you're like, all right, game's on. Come home from work, game's on. And then, you're not married, but you get an angry wife at you, you get an angry child at you, and you get house stuff you got to do. And hockey, it's like, all right, tonight there's no hockey. Tomorrow there's hockey. They have to no hockey. And you get a little bit of a break where you're not missing anything, but you're still getting stuff done and putting quality time in.
Yeah, the nice thing is that the way it's spread out, you at least know you'll be able to see some of the big games. Because it's like, okay, I'm busy during the week on these nights, but hey, the big game is Friday night, and I could easily watch that. Where sometimes in baseball, the big games are like in the middle of the day during the week, and you can't see those.
Yeah, it's college me was like I loved it.
Oh, sure.
I could go out at night and during the day I'd catch the game and not miss anything when I went out. Me with a job is like, what the hell? Who's off on a Thursday at noon?
Well, I know we're going to talk a lot about the Cubs, I know that, but if they were in the division series, I'd be feeling the frustration. And I felt the frustration for game 163 because that was all in the middle of the day, and the division series was starting in the middle of the day.
Yeah, frustrating. Let's just segue right over to baseball. Right. I just want to talk White Sox briefly.
Yeah, me too.
So, the White Sox didn't finish with a very good record. But you saw a few things in there that are positives. I know a lot of people are down on Yohan Moncada, but he's really young, and statistically, he's basically an average MLB player. I mean, don't you sort of just take that, knowing that he's going to get better, especially once he cuts down on the strikeouts.
Yeah, I mean, the strikeouts, there's a ridiculous amount of strikeouts, but, this was his first full season, and you really saw what he can do. He's got a really nice swing. He can draw walks. It's just a learning process. That's just going to be kind of a be patient type thing. That's how a lot of these players go. So, at least even if the numbers don't look that pretty, at least be thankful that he was able to finally get a full season under his belt, because that'll help a lot with the learning process.
Yeah, and White Sox fans, if you're down on him, just look at the first couple seasons of Javi Baez.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
They were terrible. And now he's, an MVP candidate. So, Yohan Moncada, it's got a long way to go, but he's young, and even with him being bad, he's still like statistically the average Major League Baseball hitter.
Yeah. Yeah, 315 on base, 400 slugging, 714 OPS. Those are pretty much around your MLB averages right there. Don't look at batting averages much. That's not as relevant these days as it was a while ago. I mean, it still has a place, but it's not the be all end all offensive measurement. You look at the home run numbers, uh, 17. So there's obviously some pop in the bat, which there was predicted to be, but 23 years old. If it's the same thing at this time next year, then I would start to worry. But it's still too early. Don't write him off yet.
Yeah. Tim Anderson, you started to see improvements in the walk numbers, but you saw the guy has just lightning speed on the bases, and he's just going to have to continue working to get on base more and be more selective in his pitch taking and draw some more walks, because he's going to be a demon on the base paths. He just has to get on base.
I think the impressive thing I saw from him was the power. I thought the power was really a nice thing, 20 home runs. So you're seeing something there. I don't think Tim Anderson's ever going to be a spectacular on base guy, but it's something he's definitely going to get better at.
Yeah, he just has to be more patient and more selective on his pitches he swings at, because him getting on base is going to be more important than getting a home run. I guess that's dumb to say, but it's he just needs to get on base, because his speed is going to be a weapon in scoring runs. And there's a lot of big bopper bats that are going to be coming into this lineup. Moncada has the power. Polka clearly has the power. Eloy is going to have, when he comes up eventually, has power. Just get on base and steal second, and then put yourself in scoring position from a walk.
Yeah, exactly.
Or make contact and beat out infield singles. They're just as good as long singles in the gaps.
Yep.
Polka, the guy's got pop in his bat.
Nowhere.
Yeah, I don't know what he's ever going to be long term, but boy, he carries a boomstick.
Yeah, he does. I did not expect that. I mean, did he lead the team in homers? Yeah, he did. 27. That's crazy.
Yeah, he had a lot of home runs. Yeah. So yeah, great pop in his bat, and I don't know what you expect from him long term, or where his place in this team is going to be, but having that kind of power is definitely a plus when you're trying to figure out what pieces you have in place.
Yeah.
And then Reynaldo Lopez. He started off real strong, struggled towards the middle of the year, but his last 7 starts or so, the guy was almost unhittable. We saw close up against, when they played against the Cubs. The guy looked fantastic, like he is absolutely figuring it out.
Well, the Hawks are now losing 4-3, so that's why I'm kind of sour right now. So sorry about that, but
no problem. I have the game. I can't see the TV.
2 goals in
here.
like 7 seconds.
That's going to be the big problem with the Blackhawks is turnovers and young defenses, and not your main goaltender. There's going to be some quick scoring.
Yeah, so I'm sorry about that. Anyway, back to White Sox.
Yeah, Reynaldo Lopez at the end of the season had about a 7-game stretch where he was almost unhittable.
Yeah, there was going to be some kinky moments for him in the middle of the season. It was just expected. That's part of being a young pitcher.
Yeah, you Kopech, you feel like what you're going to get from him once he's comes back from Tommy John. You feel good about Reynaldo Lopez. You've got some quality arms in the minors, and the two question marks then are Carlos Rodon, who at times looked just pedestrian, and then there was other times where he just looked lights out, and I just don't know what you expect from him. But if nothing else, if he ends up being your 4 or 5 guy, that means you got a pretty darn good rotation.
Yeah, I still want to see a full season from him before I really make a judgment.
I mean, I do too, but it's just, he's starting to get to the age where, you expect those kind of inconsistencies from a real young guy. And I'm not saying he's old, but was he like 27? He's at the point where you should have a more consistent track record than you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, the injuries have been really tough, but, one thing, I think one thing that I'm really down on the White Sox right now was his performance, because he had that ERA going for him for a while, but the peripherals were not good.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's got incredible stuff. It's just putting it together and maintaining the command. And, at some point you got to shit or get off the pot with him. And either he's a guy that you're excited about to have in your rotation, or, you just deal with him until you can move on with some of the more exciting pieces that you have. But, he's got to do something, and hopefully on next year he's healthy coming into the season and works out some of those kinks during the off season and spring training.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to fully write him off. I'm just saying that I still need to be convinced from him first. Because there's a lot of other guys on the White Sox that are going to be coming up that I can at least see, okay, I see that this could work out here. I've yet to really see that from Rodon. I know the pure stuff is really good, but I got to see it being fully utilized over a full season. I think that's fair, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very fair, very fair. And I think White Sox fans would agree with you, is that, they get frustrated with him, and then he'll have a couple games where he just shuts everybody up, and then goes back, once the criticism silences, he goes and, incites riots again with poor pitching.
Right. I know there's cautious optimism, I feel like, with a lot of Sox fans from him, but, being healthy for a full season is the first key. Let's face it.
But, I mean, this leads to my question is, does Kopech's injury change, I guess, the not the direction of the team, but the trajectory of when they expect to compete, and when the White Sox organization goes out and tries to bring in quality free agents?
I think overall, no, because there's so many other prospects that you're looking to really perform here. So I don't think just him alone is going to derail everything. It stinks, no doubt, but I don't think it's. I don't think it's going to push the whole thing back.
And I guess that leads me to my final question is, what moves do the White Sox make this offseason? They're not going to sit, on their hands and be stagnant, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to make big splashes. What do you think they're going to do
this offseason?
Yeah, this winter.
Well, I don't know if they're going to make any big splashes yet, because I'm trying to think really who's out there that would fit the team right now, unless you're thinking, hey, let's get this big free agent here and then have him, ride with us until we're good. I think that they're going to do a number of veteran guys that you can maybe sign and trade, or maybe guys that they're young enough to be around for a while, but they're old enough to be, like experienced veterans. I'd have to look at the full free agent list for the year, but I think you'll see them make a number of small to decently fairly sized moves. I don't think they're going to try to make any splashes for another year yet, but you never know.
Yeah, I started going through the list and I didn't, dig deeply into it, but the problem is that there's some guys at positions that I think they could help them, like Yasmani Grindal. I think he could be a big help to this team as a veteran at a position that they need. But there's a bunch of guys like that, and they're in their 30s, and
Right.
I don't think that makes sense for the White Sox, because I don't think next year is the year that they make that move. I still think that the Indians will have that division locked down next year, but the year after is when you're because next year is like, oh, I think you're going to be a much better team, but you look, the Red Sox are going to be good. You expect the Yankees to be good. The Indians you expect to be good. The Astros you expect to be good. And, it's basically everybody competing for one wild card spot. And that's, I think the American League is a little too strong to jump both feet into free agency this season, but the next season, probably much more so. But, there are guys I think could help. It just doesn't make sense to do it now, because they're just going to be a year older by the time that you're ready to compete.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yasmani
Um,
Grandal, that's an interesting name you brought up, because that could actually be beneficial for the White Sox. I think he's a great guy to work with the pitching staff. He's experienced a lot of great pitchers, and I think he could be a very helping hand to these young pitchers. So I'm kind of glad you brought that name up, because that's something to think about.
yeah, I mean, I like the name. I just don't know what the White Sox, their pitch to him is, other than just open checkbook and signing the big money. For him, I don't think it makes sense, because he can go to a competitor. And for the White Sox, he's a 30 something year old catcher. I just don't know how long he goes. And, I just don't think this is the year. But there's a couple names that popped out at me that I was like, this could be something that makes sense for the White Sox. There's 2 position players and a couple of starting pitchers.
All right.
So the first name, Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper is still young. So if you do sign him, he's a major attraction to bring fans to the stadium, put butts in the seats. And also, when you're ready to compete, he's still in his prime. So he grows with this team.
I like the idea of him in Chicago, except on the corner of Clark and Addison, but that's just me.
Now, I agree with you, but I'm just saying is names that make sense to go after. The other one's Manny Machado.
Yeah, there's been a lot more links to Manny Machado for the White Sox than Bryce Harper. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there are the links. I'm just saying that looking at most of the top guys are in their 30s, and both those guys are still in their mid 20s. That makes sense. And then there's a couple pitchers that if you think about the trajectory the Cubs took, and that first big step that they took from being a rebuild to being a competitor, was they signed John Lester. And there's a couple names that are out there that could be that boost. One of them is Clayton Kershaw.
You think he's not going to re-sign with LA?
I think he does. I'm just saying is he's
You're just saying
going
as a target.
Yeah, I'm just saying is I'm not saying these are ones that the White Sox will sign or have heard anything about them, being linked to. I'm just saying, looking at the list, there's just not a lot of names that as far as the top free agents that make a lot of sense for the White Sox.
Sure.
But those 3, and then maybe Dallas Keuchel, those are the ones that do make sense if you're going to spend big money on free
I think
agency.
Keuchel would be more likely than Kershaw. Just saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, I mean, they might add a veteran bench guy, and they'll probably try to fix that bullpen with arms that you can flip if the season's not going as expected, and you find yourself out of it at the trade deadline. I just that's what I think they do. I still don't see the White Sox opening the purse and spending the money.
Yeah, I mean, they'll spend, some money on some free agents, but I don't think it's going to be anything gigantic. Not at this point.
I think it's B-level guys and bullpen arms to try to bolster that, because that bullpen was
that's going to be much needed.
And if you start stringing good starting pitching together, which I think they have the possibility to do, is if you're able to lock down those games at the end of the year or at the end of the game, then that's good for your team. That's how you start winning games.
Yeah.
They haven't really had a ton. I mean, they've been able to score runs. So
yeah, what's interesting that the White Sox have done the past few years is they've signed bullpen guys pretty much for the intention of trading them. Like you had Joaquim Soria last year. I mean, we all knew that if he was going to have a good season, he was going to be traded to a contender. Now I think they're going to make some bullpen moves that will benefit the team in the long run. I mean, obviously, you don't sign bullpen guys necessarily to long deals, but you'll try to sign some guys and kind of try them out and see, if some of the guys work, then you think about keeping them in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I hope this is where the White Sox start turning the corner, because White Sox fans have been, put through the ringer the last few years.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I want to move and wrap this up with the Cubs. Yeah. It's like everything we dreaded came to reality.
Mm-hmm.
The Brewers caught up to the Cubs and didn't pass them, forcing a game 163. And, then they had to turn around and play the next day in the wild card game. And, you had nothing, and your offense flat out gave you nada. You scored 2 runs in 22 innings.
At home. At home.
At home, yes.
At home. Look, I know this team won 95 games. I know Chris Bryant has been injured. I know we haven't had Yu Darvish for pretty much the entire season. I know we haven't had our closer through half the season. I know that our best reliever overall was hurt the last few weeks. But this offense has to take full responsibility for the way this season ended. You cannot blame the pitching. John Lester and Jose Quintana did their jobs.
Wait, rephrase that. Your good friend, John Lester.
Yes. Yes. My good Twitter buddy, John Lester.
But you're right. You can't blame that pitching. Even when there were struggles and, you had injuries, that pitching, the starting rotation in the bullpen held it down for you and put you in a position that you should be able to win. And the Cubs offense just didn't show up. They just didn't.
And you know what? I can't be mad at Kyle Hendricks. He's never been in that situation before. Yeah, the 0-2 pitch to Tony Walters was not good. You left it right over the plate on 0-2. But, it's still, you had 2 ground balls that snuck through for singles in a situation that he's never been in before, in a game that you should have already had won. And you got to give a lot of credit, too, to Cole Hamels.
I don't put any blame at all on Kyle Hendricks, because you scored 1 run in 13 innings. It shouldn't have even come to that. It should not have even come to that. Is The Rockies have an offense that's almost as anemic as the Cubs, and you couldn't put them away. And I'm going to be honest with you, is I'm mad as hell that they lost, and I'm not happy about it. But some part of me is a little bit relieved because if they would have won that game, all that would have happened is they started a series with the Brewers where the Brewers just spanked them and probably swept them. Maybe the Cubs take one, and this way you just save a little bit of face. Is all right. You lost to the Rockies and you're out. You don't have to get beat up by the Brewers before they go on to get their butts kicked by the Dodgers.
Yeah, losing to the Brewers in a postseason series would be just awful. It would be just awful. And here's the other thing that I tell myself. You think about, oh man, a sub hitting Tony Walters on 0-2 gave the Rockies the winning run. Were the Cubs going to score again? I tell myself, no, they weren't. They weren't going to score again.
They weren't going to score again unless it gets so deep that the Rockies had to start throwing position players out there.
Yeah, if freaking Ian Desmond had to go up there and start lobbing pitches.
What, you mean Desmond Howard? Can we just pause for a second and talk about how bad A-Rod is as an announcer?
What did he call Elmora? Elmonte?
Elmonte.
Yeah. I switched over to ESPN2 with Jason Benetti. That was fantastic.
That was the Nerdcast. Benetti
great.
was great. The one guy with the East Coast accent, I didn't care for him much, but I liked all of the stats. I like Jason Benetti a lot.
I just like not listening to A-Rod.
I like not listening to A-Rod. Actually, before I knew that they were doing the Nerdcast, I was listening on ESPN Deportes. I was like, I don't speak Spanish. I don't know what they're saying, but I'm sure it's a lot better than what A-Rod is saying.
And the thing with A-Rod is, I thought he did a fantastic job as a studio analyst 2 years ago when he first joined the broadcast.
Yes.
He did a great job with that.
He was
fantastic.
But
as a color guy,
it's because he just doesn't have enough to talk about, and he's like, I got to say something. And
right
in the studio, there was three guys, and I thought the studio was it Frank Thomas, A-Rod, and Pete Rose. They were fantastic, and I know there was some people that weren't fans of Pete Rose, but I just thought those three worked together so well. And individually, I think they're all weirdos, but together they just had some sort of chemistry.
It was fun. When they were weirdos together, it was fun. It was a good broadcast. It kept you, it kept you in it. You loved watching it.
Yeah, it's like, there was a bunch of individual weirdos but then they come together and they're Kids in the Hall or Monty Python, and they do something magical. They were great, but A-Rod is a color man. I mean, I don't know if you heard it when he kept calling. I think he did it twice where he called Ian Desmond Howard.
That's funny.
Then he was referring to the Rockies starting pitcher, kept calling him sexy. It was just so many ridiculous things that I just didn't know what to do with him. But you're right. I eventually switched over when I found out the StatCast was broadcasting, and I was like, all right, I can be into this. And I really like Jason Benetti, and honest to God, White Sox fans, he's a fantastic one. And you got rid of probably my least favorite broadcaster and you brought in a really good one. So kudos on that.
Yeah. That was what was cool about it is that, how do I say it? They took the stats that were given to them and they didn't try to make it too complicated. These are advanced stats, but they kind of showed you through a combination of talking and visuals, kind of how it all works. I just thought they did a really good job with that.
Yeah, I thought they did too. I mean, it wasn't like listening to Billy Bean talk with, Theo Epstein. It's they incorporated it into the way they were talking about the game, and it is just, like, oh, that ball that the outfielder for the Rockies dropped and Chris Bryant got on base. Statistically, you catch that 9 out of 10 times, and the Cubs caught a break there.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I think it was the Almora catch at the wall. They were talking about that, exit velocity, launch angle, and all that stuff. Like, I'm really into that stuff, so I like hearing about it. And can we talk about how the heck that stayed in the park?
I have no idea. I have no idea, and I'm glad it did, but I thought that was gone.
Oh, me too.
I think Albert Almora is the only one in that whole stadium or watching on television that didn't think it was going out.
Yeah, definitely.
And to be fair, he's the only one that really mattered.
Right.
But yeah, it was a well hit ball, and I'm glad it didn't, because Lester really buckled down after that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you read or saw the quote by John Lester after the game. I think it was something like, sometimes you got to get your dick knocked in the dirt.
I was just going to bring that quote up. I was just going to bring it up because you know what? Maybe that was kind of a humbling experience for this team. Maybe it was. What was really interesting after that is you heard Theo Epstein. And first of all, Theo Epstein had a fantastic press conference in terms of what he wants to do for the future, looking to next year. He showed he was not happy. He didn't bullshit you in any way. He's like, this is the problem. Our offense broke, and frankly, there were times that I didn't think we were going at it 100%. And, maybe going back to John Lester's comments and then those Theo Epstein comments, maybe that's something that this team will really think about in the future.
And here's the thing. Here's some statistics that sum up the anomaly that's the Cubs offense. The Cubs overall for the entire season was 9th in baseball in runs scored. They were 2nd in overall in hits. They were 10th in OPS. But they also had they tied for the most games with zero or 1 run scored.
Yep.
And the team they tied with, the Orioles, who lost 115 games.
God.
The Cubs won 95, and they both had 40 games with 0 or 1 run scored.
That's what happens when you have good arms.
Like, how do you do the mental gymnastics to make those two things mesh? Well, you win 95 games, you have 40 games of 0-1 runs, but you have the second most hits in baseball. Like, how does that happen?
I think a lot of those hits came. Do you remember middle of the season in late June when they were scoring 10 plus runs several days in a row, and they weren't hitting the ball out of the park. It was just single after single after single after single after single. I think a lot of the hits came around there, honestly. But
can you imagine like a future Cubs fan that, didn't watch this, either like not born yet or too young to remember all this, goes back and just looks at the stats and was like, how the hell did any of this make sense? We lived through it. We know that it was 10 runs or bust, but like if you didn't live through to watch it, just looking statistics wise and seeing things on paper, you're like, somewhere there's got to be a typo.
Yeah, it was such a weird season. It really was. I think some of the most staggering numbers were the numbers from September. If you look at the offensive numbers from the second half alone, and especially September, oh boy, it's not good.
Yeah, weren't they in September the worst hitting team in baseball?
Yeah, they probably were. I mean, the OBP was around 300. That's not good at all.
No, and what's weird is that everybody sucked. Daniel Murphy sucked.
Yep.
Chris Bryant sucked. Wilson Contreras really sucked.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like you couldn't trust anybody.
Even Javi was struggling a lot of September.
Yeah. Javi, who had a great season, just nothing. Rizzo, probably your best hitter, and he wasn't particularly good either.
No, he wasn't terrible, but yeah, he wasn't himself. Like, he had a really good August. It wasn't like that in September. I can't think of one player that really, one position player with the bat. I can't think of one player that had an outstanding finish to the season. I don't think I could think of a single one. Every year, there's always somebody who finishes really hot, and you're like, oh man, look at that guy go. Not this year. Everyone went cold.
Yeah, at the same time, which is like, I get Theo's frustration because there's no rhyme or reason for that. There's absolutely none.
And that's not the only time this happened. This offense went cold so many times, and when it went cold, it was everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And baseball's a funny game. Is one guy can carry a team if he's hitting hot enough. The Cubs didn't have.
Look at Christian Yelich.
Yeah, Cubs had nobody, and you look down the line, and it's not like it's the same issue everybody's having. So I mean, you start. Jason Hayward is going back to just pounding balls into the ground, and hitting into double plays. You look at Rizzo. Rizzo's, I mean, just eyeball test. I'm guessing strikeouts are up, and he's hitting right into the shift. Baez is, striking out. Daniel Murphy's got more strikeouts than what you're used to. You're used to him putting the ball into play. Bryant, I mean, you can sort of chalk that up to that shoulder injury. He just hasn't looked.
Yeah, I think with him, that was more the injury.
And God knows what's wrong with Wilson Contreras. In that last series against the Cardinals, there was Cardinals Twitter feeds kept showing up in my my feed, and somebody just posted, I wish Wilson Contreras was our catcher so we could get a better draft pick.
Well, I have a theory on Wilson. I don't know if it's true or not, but I have a theory.
I want to hear it.
I think he's injured. He's played a lot of games. And, he hasn't really been the same since that hamstring injury last year. What my hope is that a long off season, he can really kind of recuperate. That's my hope.
I hope.
But he could not lift the ball to save his life.
And what's frustrating is everybody knew that he couldn't hit. So why not at least put in Caratini? It's not like he was hitting either, but, like he at least gave you something every once in a while. Contreras just gave you nada.
The credit I give to Caratini, he was a pretty good pitch framer. And, his defense got a lot better.
I mean, I know you don't play him when Lester's pitching. You need Contreras in there for that back pick and, his John Lester's comfort with him. But for the other players, why don't you put Caratini in there? Your team is struggling. Score runs is put a guy in there who's hitting better.
Yeah. It wasn't a good situation.
And then we get to the Joe Madden situation. What happens with Joe?
Yeah.
He's there. They said he's going to be the manager next year, but his contract is up after that. Are they going to let him walk? What are they doing?
Lame duck manager.
I don't know what they're thinking, and I'm not saying that Joe is the guy and you have to keep Joe, because I have my bones to pick with him, but I don't understand the lame duck manager. Is either you move on and get the guy you want, or you sign him to an extension. The lame duck thing, I don't think that's good for anybody.
My only thought is they're trying to kind of wait him out one more year, see what happens, and then go from there. Again, the lame duck thing is not the ideal situation, but that's my only idea because I think it's clear that Theo Epstein and Joe Madden do not always see eye to eye. Uh, Epstein referenced that and said that, disagreement was a good thing. And he keeps trying to reiterate that these rumors of tension in the media are not true. While I believe him to an extent, I think that there is clearly a bit of truth there. They clearly don't always see eye to eye on everything. And I think that it was pretty evident that Theo Epstein was frustrated with some of the things that Joe did this year as he talked in the press conference. Whether he was directly addressing Joe or not, I think it was pretty obvious he was, I don't want to say taking shots, but referencing some things about Joe Madden or the managing period from any of the coaches that he didn't care for.
And honestly, I think Joe's comments about the Addison Russell situation didn't sit well with Theo.
No, as they shouldn't have.
Joe, for a guy that's very thoughtful and seems like an enlightened guy, was pretty callous about that whole situation.
Yeah, that was not great.
No, and
if he really didn't want to quote unquote take sides, I think the right thing to say is, there's an investigation. I will not be commenting during the investigation. I think it's not maybe what everyone would like. Maybe it's not the most necessary, but it's better than saying what he said.
Yeah, I mean, Theo, I didn't 100% love what Theo had to say, but I thought it was the most correct thing for him to say in his position. Is he said, ultimately you just have to make sure that the victim is okay, and we're going to support her however, but we're not going to turn our back on our guy, and we're going to get him whatever help he needs. Like, it was a lot better politically than Joe. Still not what I would have said, but who knows if what I would have said is the correct thing either. But Joe was the wrong thing. Joe said the wrong thing the wrong way. And Joe's not a guy that minces his words. So when he said it like that, it's one thing if Ozzie Guillen were to say it like that, because you're like, that guy is just, the words come out of his mouth faster than his brain can process them.
Right.
Joe's not like that.
Right.
So when Joe said it, it was a real callous situation. And I'm not saying that that's the reason for all this, but I'm saying is that one of the straws?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that Theo wasn't too thrilled about it. I don't think there's any question about that whatsoever. I don't know if that directly affected this whole situation. I really kind of, I don't know if it had maybe a little bit, or I don't know. But either way, I don't think it really helped any of the disagreements that the two had with each other. Let's just say that.
So off season, they've got some big decisions to make as far as their players. Do they bring back Cole Hamels?
Absolutely.
And here's the thing: is you can pick him up for $20 million, or you can let him loose. And I think it's a $6 million buyout, but the Rangers are the ones that have to pay that. And if that's the case, is there a way you let him out and then negotiate a more favorable contract for a longer term? Or do you just pick up that $20 million option?
Yeah, the $20 million, look at that option now, $20 million. That's ridiculous, but that's a whole other story. I could see it going either way, but I think one thing seems fairly certain: he's going to be back next year.
Yeah, I mean, the way Theo talked about him and being a breath of fresh air, and the way he pitched, and I said before they even traded for him that I liked Cole Hamels. I didn't think that tank was empty. The way he pitches, You think he can last into his late 30s. So I think he's got a couple more years in the
Me too.
tank. So I like bringing him back. It strengthens your bullpen. Strengthens your rotation. Jesse Chavez. He had a great quote that, he basically pointed the Cubs emblem and said, "It's either this or I retire."
I love Jesse Chavez, and I would definitely think about bringing back. Here's my one concern. We've seen so many times. Yes! Sorry, Jonathan Tays, hat trick, overtime. Sorry, edit that out.
I might just leave it in because that was great.
Yes! Oh my God. Oh, I love this. Oh, baby. I am so sorry about that, folks.
Don't be excited.
Breakaway goal.
When it comes down to it, is we're both meatballs in some ways, shape, or form. We're both meatballs.
Oh my gosh. Hat trick. Oh my gosh. Give me the Jonathan Tays redemption tour. Give it to me. Oh my God. And now the Hawks fans are throwing the hats on St. Louis and the St. Louis ice. Oh,
love it.
Man. Oh. Oh. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, you said you were concerned about Jesse Chavez.
Okay, so I loved Jesse Chavez. But how many times do we see a reliever have an incredible year, you re-sign him, and then just completely tanks the next year? Jesse Chavez has been around for a while. He's had some good years. He's had some really bad years. Do I want them to re-sign him? Yes. Would I be surprised if he kind of takes a real step back next year? Not necessarily, but that's just how it goes with a lot of these types of guys. Hey, maybe he comes back and he's great. I hope he does. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm comfortable bringing him back on a 1-year deal. Obviously it's going to be a pay raise over what he had. I think this year was 1 year, $1 million, but not too much more than that. You signed him to 1 year, and you squeeze whatever you can out of him, because clearly in his mind he's at the end of his career, and I guess his age, career arc are contributing factors that he sees. But he knows this, and having an opportunity to have a redemption season for the Cubs, hopefully they can squeeze what they got out of him this year and for a whole season. And if you can do that, you have to be elated.
Yeah, let's face it, he was the guy you trusted in the bullpen more than anybody in the final week.
In the second half, Strop was great, but
then he got hurt.
You can't say that you can't say that you trusted Strop more. Like, Chavez was great since the Cubs acquired him.
He was consistently good.
Let's see what else. I don't even want to speculate what happens with Addison Russell.
I want him gone.
I have a feeling that that's going to be what happens.
I'm not so sure. I hope I'm wrong, but
he's
I'm
gone
not so
40
sure.
games. So the Cubs realize the importance of every game now. So I feel like they're going to do something to move on. And I've heard the rumors of DJ LeMahieu.
If, let's say you don't get Manny Machado and you want to dump Russell, which I hope they do, that wouldn't be a bad choice, I don't think. I think he's a little overrated because a lot of his stats are a little bit blown up in Colorado, but he's still good enough to be, a
defensive wise. Can you imagine a middle infield of DJ LeMahieu and Javi Baez?
That'd be something.
Double plays would be turned left and right.
Yeah. And let's get something clear. Even though he said nothing could be ruled out yet, I think Murphy's as good as gone.
Yeah, Daniel Murphy, they're not bringing him
bringing
back. I think there might have been a possibility had he done what he did when the first, couple weeks he was here. But when they saw what his defensive liabilities, and his inability to help the Cubs, score runs at the end of the season, there's no way they bring him back. He's done.
His knees are shot. He can't play defense. He could barely move out there. He's old. He's getting old. Yeah, he's going to sign somewhere else. Probably nothing too big, but yeah, it's not going to be here.
Manny Machado's got to be in play because I think, especially considering the Addison Russell situation, that infield, if everybody's healthy, of Baez, Bryant, Machado, and Rizzo, whoo boy.
Me likey.
I still think it makes more sense than Bryce Harper. I wouldn't hate either one. I mean, I know
from a team, like a fitting in standpoint, yes, I would agree.
I know there's a lot of people that hate Bryce Harper, and I don't. I kind of like him. I think he's just really cocky, but not in a bad way. But I think a lot of people are turned off by it. But I think, he's absolutely a fantastic baseball player. And I think the Cubs culture could be a really good influence on him because that culture in Washington is broken.
Yeah, it's kind of a mess. And you know what? If you take a nice, good look at his statistics, you're going to say, oh, yeah, I kind of want that. You want, the past few years, you want a guy who has a 400 plus on base and an OPS of nearly 1,000. Yeah, you're going to want that. But position-wise, yeah, Manny Machado would probably be a better fit. I would openly welcome either. So, there's a long way to go with that.
I mean, unless, and this is a very unlikely situation, if Jason Hayward opts out of his contract, which I really don't see happening.
That's not going to happen.
Is that opens up the right field position for bringing in Bryce Harper. And I'm not saying that, it's Jason Hayward is the reason you don't sign him. It's you got a crowded outfield, and I think we're at the point where I don't think we see both Ian Happ and Kyle Schwarber on this team next year.
No, I think Theo Epstein is entering a new phase, and this phase is time to kind of part your absolute safety nets with your young core and let some of them go if it means future success. If that means parting ways with Ian Happ, Schwarber, Almora to make room or trade for somebody better, then they're going to do it. They were hesitant the last few years because you saw success with them, but where they're heading, this direction, it's that next phase. You got to bring in some proven stars. And I'm going to write this for Cubby Scribble. I technically did. The article's coming out tomorrow. There's a very intriguing name that I wouldn't mind them exploring in a trade. That's Whit Merrifield of the Royals. I don't know if you know much about him.
I don't.
So
I was doing some racking my brain. I'm like, I know the name. I just trying to think what I know about him.
So Whit Merrifield is a utility man. He's a leadoff guy. He's kind of been under the radar because he's a late bloomer, but last few years, 3 years in the majors, he's been very good. Overall, 293, 342, 437 slash. Last year, 304, 367, 438 slash. and leading the league in stolen bases with 45. That would solve your leadoff issues right there. But you'd probably have to pay a hefty price. And you'd probably have to part ways with one of those outfield guys. And I mean, hey, if you included Ian Happ in a package, you say, well, Ian Happ is young enough to have a lot of promise, and the Royals are rebuilding right now. I mean, he was a 5.2 F WAR player last year and a 5.5 B WAR player. So it's something to think about, in addition to potentially making room on a team for a guy like Bryce Harper.
Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility. And here's the thing is those, this is a team that on paper should be pretty stacked. We saw the anomaly struggles, but there's definitely room to add either a Bryce Harper or a Manny Machado and have them fit well.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing to consider, I think when you're looking for the future with the catching core, I think it may be in their best interest to go sign another catcher. One that, not like a David Ross, but somebody that can be a backup to Contreras that's actually pretty decent and not make Contreras start almost every day. I don't know if Victor Caratini is going to be that guy for the future. I think you got to get another proven veteran in there.
Yeah, I think Victor Caratini should be an American League player, where he can catch sometimes and DH sometimes.
Yeah, or play first sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, he's played first. I think that's where he belongs. But because it sucks that he's a young player, and if you leave him down in the minors, he's sort of wasting away. But if you keep him up, he's not getting the playing time. And you're right, they do ride Wilson Contreras real hard.
Yeah, and I just think you're going to need to help him out here.
That's not a bad idea. But I mean, there's not a lot of wiggle room with this team. Your outfield is the only place you can really do something. Almora, Schwarber, Happ, those are all movable pieces that one of them's got to be gone next year, you'd think.
Yeah, it's come to that point. And, last year I wasn't ready to move on from any of those guys. Now I think this year it kind of showed me and a lot of other people that moving on from those guys is probably kind of necessary just for the better of the team.
And I don't know out of those three who your choice would be to go first. Mine would be Ian Happ.
Probably me too.
And I think he's got a good career, like a solid career in front of him. So it's not at the talent level. I just feel like he's less of a fit with this team from a personality standpoint and from a playing standpoint. Almora can give you a good defensive play. He's a rah-rah guy. He's a contact hitter. Nice. Schwarber has just monster power. And, just from interviews and things, seems like he's right in the mix as far as the core of the chemistry or the personality of this team. But Ian Happ's pretty robotic. He's a really fast guy, but he just doesn't give you the outfield presence that Almora does. He doesn't have the power of Schwarber. And he strikes out way too much.
The swing, it looks kind of like a golf swing, just really long. It can't catch up.
Yeah, and I just feel like he's the one that's the odd man out.
I will give him credit though. He's had some unbelievably great at bats. Like drawing walks. doesn't get a lot of hits, but the one thing I give him a lot of credit for is he's had some great at-bats down the stretch that have resulted in getting on base. So I'll give him that, but yeah, you're definitely right about a lot of those things.
So it's going to be an interesting offseason, and I don't think you have a lot of holes to plug, but I think there is work that needs to be done. And I think a lot of it
there's
is,
plenty of it.
I think a lot of it, the vast majority of it is just within your own clubhouse is, you know, figuring out the issues of individual players and correcting those. Because talent wise, on paper wise, this team should be much better than they are. And
Of course.
I get it, 95 wins, but the way they finished the season, everybody is disappointed.
Well, yeah, I mean, you should have won this division. You should have won it. There's no question. And if I may go back to the wild card game, because I have a few more thoughts that I want to talk about that game that kind of epitomizes the way this offense has been. And I bet you know what moment probably frustrated me the most. But I'll say it anyway. If you had to take a wild guess before I say it, do you know what I'm thinking about?
Wait, in the wild card game?
Yes.
What your most frustrating thing was how they didn't take advantage of all of the opportunities they had, the calls that went in their favor, the dropped ball.
Yes. The Rizzo double play. 2 on, 1 out, swings at the first pitch, hits a routine double play. I almost took my remote and shattered it against the wall, but I didn't. I certainly yelled, but I didn't break the remote. I mean, right there. The patience is gone from a lot of these guys, and you're just pounding the ball into the ground. You're not driving it, not having a good at bat. You've seen so much of that from this Cubs team. That game, let me tell you, that wild card game summarized every single frustrating thing about the Cubs this year. You didn't come up with the big hit. You didn't score a lot of runs. The winning run was driven in by a sub-2 hitting scrub. It was a long game with no rest because you played a bunch of extra innings. You
The
could
crazy
check
part
every
is
mark from the season in that game.
So it was the decision that you made that got you the run that you needed to take it in extra innings also was the decision that probably cost you the game as well. Because if you don't score that run unless Gore is in there running the bases, and because you have Gore in there, you take away that Rizzo bat in the lineup, and it's probably necessary to win that game in extras.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I'm not upset at Joe Madden for pinch hitting Gore because that's what tied the game. It was the right decision. And ultimately, though we've had our gripes with Madden, I don't think that he lost this game. Now, I don't know.
It wasn't. I thought it was a bad decision. It
was a rough one.
It was. I mean, it ultimately was the right decision,
right.
But it was just the way that there's the coincidence that it happened that way. That the decision you made that was fantastic, that helped you score the run that tied it, also ended up being detrimental later on, and Joe managed the hell out of that game, and there was honestly is how much managing can you do when nobody's hitting?
Right. Now, I don't know if this was the coach's decision. I don't know if this was his decision, but you knew the game was over when Gore swung 3-2 and struck out on ball 4.
Whoever didn't go up there and say, no matter what, do not take that bat off of your shoulders, should be punched in the face. Like, why didn't everybody in the stadium, fans, coaches, teammates, the other team, everybody should have gone up to him and be like, just put the bat up there like, you're the ninth hitter on a little league team. Just stand there.
Yep. That as soon as that happened, you knew it was over.
That was honestly the point where I just went, F this. F this. I'm angry.
Yeah. Yep. And look, the Cubs had a chance to win that game with 2 on and 1 out. It Baez at second base. That was when they didn't score there, you kind of felt like they were going to lose.
I just assumed that it would be like Ian Desmond or Nolan Arenado or Trevor Story that hit a home run, like a solo shot that won it. That's what I assumed, and not the way it happened. They just not the way I expected it to happen. But yeah, that when you don't score any runs, you score 1 run in 13 innings, bad things happen. You have those, you don't have any cushion to work. And the Colorado Rockies, to their credit, is they played 3 consecutive games in 3 different time zones. And I take is the midday guy on the score, Bernstein. He said, the Rockies came to play. Well, no, they didn't either, because their bats stunk as well. But you got to give them credit, is they scored more runs than the Cubs, and they were under the same crap conditions the Cubs were. If there was another team that had a crappy schedule that was against them, it was the Rockies, and they had a lot of games and not as many, not a lot of days, and they ended up having to play 3 days in a row in 3 different time zones, and their pitching was a little bit better than ours, or maybe their hitting was a little bit better, but they just were, a tiny bit better that night, and they got the opportunity to go get their butts kicked by Milwaukee.
Yeah, I keep trying to tell myself that the Cubs would probably get their shit kicked in by Milwaukee. They'd won that game, but still, at least you wouldn't be sitting on like October 4th and saying there's no Cubs postseason baseball, which it's really weird because now it's what we expect. We expect long postseason runs. That's something we could never say before, like 4 years ago. Now it's everything you expect. You expect those long playoff runs, but this year it just feels so empty right now. And honestly, it makes me look, I love baseball more than anything, but a lot of people are watching live tweeting games, and every time I try to watch one of the games, I just think, damn it, we should be in that game. We should be playing right now, but we're not.
The only happiness I get is, that hope that the Yankees and the Brewers get knocked out, so they have no possibility of winning the World Series. I'm okay with anybody else winning it, just not those 2 teams.
If you had to ask me who I wanted to see win, I would say Cleveland, but they're probably going to get swept or losing 4 to the Astros. I would say Colorado, but they're going to lose. And I would have said Atlanta. They're probably going to lose. So, whatever.
I would have said Oakland, but then they did a bullpen start to
they never
the playoff game.
chance.
No, they didn't. But when they announced that, it was like the Yankees were starting like their best starting pitcher versus a bullpen game for the A's. I was just like, well, A's are getting knocked out.
Yeah.
The try-hard guys just didn't work out.
Oh well, it was seen. But I think whether you love him or hate him, this ALDS between Boston and New York is going to be a hell of a series.
Yeah,
if it goes 5, that would be great.
Yeah, David Price got knocked out in inning 2/3 today.
Yep.
what a postseason disaster that guy is.
And the opposite for the Red Sox last night, former White Sox Chris Sale, who he was bringing it.
Yeah, I want more of that. I want the Yankees to lose. I hate the Yankees. I don't like their fans.
Meh. I don't hate him as many people do. I don't love him, but I don't hate him as much. I don't know. Because here's my weird thought on the Yankees. As hateable as they can be, watching them in the playoffs for so many years, I thought it was fun. You're probably going to completely disagree, but watching those games at the old Yankee Stadium, those playoff games, when I was a kid, oh, I loved every second of it. Whether I was rooting for the Yankees or not, I loved watching it.
Lived on the East Coast for almost a decade, so I got firsthand, up close, dealings with Yankees fans on the regular basis, and
Okay, that's fair.
they are so obnoxious. Like, you know how obnoxious the Lions fans are, and their team has sucked since the organization began. Just imagine how sucky those fans are and annoying they are if they had a team that just dominated the history of their sport.
Yeah, point taken. You've interacted with the Yankee fans. I have not. I know a lot of Yankee fans on Twitter. They seem cool, but I've also seen a lot of not so great Yankee fans floating around social media. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like I lived in Philadelphia, so I will never root for the Eagles because of how awful Philadelphia fans are. But yeah, other than that, like I have no qualms with the Astros winning. They got a good team. Boston fans have sort of become the new Yankees fans, but kind of growing up, they were my American League team. I liked the Orioles and I liked the Red Sox. So I'm fine if they win. You're right. I would probably root for the teams that are still in it, the Indians, just to give them one.
Yeah,
they are. But I mean, honestly, I would probably root for a Dodgers, Indians World Series because I think that would be fun. But it's probably going to be Dodgers, Red Sox. That's my guess.
Yeah, that would be fun though. That would be a great matchup. It'd be an interesting one too because think about it, they're like the opposite sides of the country.
Yeah, I think ratings wise, I think television would be very happy with it because I think that would pull in some big numbers.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
I mean, nothing compared if like it was a Yankees Cubs World Series. I think that would blow people's televisions up.
Oh, could you think about how upset the networks were in 2003 when Fox saw that they were about to get the two cursed teams meeting in the World Series, the Cubs and the Red Sox? They were ready for ratings galore, like that they couldn't even dream of. And then it ended up being Marlins, Yankees, and nobody cared.
Yeah, and it's funny because, I remember the Subway Series, Yankees, Mets, and New York fans were like, this is the World Series everybody's been waiting for. And the ratings sucked because nobody outside of New York cared at all.
Right.
But I don't have anything else I want to talk about. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
Oh, I'm sure more Cubs thoughts will come along as time goes on. I could spend hours talking about the Cubs, really, but I guess my final thoughts right now are: time will heal wounds. It doesn't feel great, but sit back and think. Did you believe that this team was going to go on a long run the past few months? Because I think it's fair to say that even though they squeezed out a lot of wins, there was a lot of uninspiring play throughout the second half, and you didn't have Chris Bryant through most of it. You didn't have Yu Darvish or Brandon Morrow through any of it. You had all those games consecutively, and your bullpen was clearly gassed. we try to keep the faith throughout the whole season because anything could happen in the game of baseball. But when you go back and you think about it, it's pretty likely you kind of doubted that this team was going to go far this
And
year. It still
here's some
hurts,
sugar plums
but
to dance in your head is if Yu Darvish comes back and pitches like we hoped he would, you bring back Cole Hamels, he pitches like he did, and you have Lester, Hendricks, and Quintana. That rotation has no holes in it.
yeah, I mean, that's looking real good.
Like, there's no holes in there at all. And you have to figure that how much of a losing streak can you go on, because that, eventually you're going to have to hit somebody's number 5 starter, and it, there's no holes in your rotation.
If you get a few more bats, you make a few changes, you have that kind of rotation. What kind of sucks is I remember the feeling of February and March. We all were so optimistic about this team. So optimistic. And then just to see it end like that. But here's something I thought of the other day. You can almost go back to every opening series, and I'm not saying the opening series automatically does this. I'm not saying that at all, but you can look at every opening series the past 4 years and see, like, it kind of set the mood for the season. 2015, you lost the opener, but then you overcame, and you beat your rivals in the Cardinals. In 2016, you dominated, you kicked ass, and that year you won the World Series. In 2017, you struggled and lost to start, but things kind of came around. This year, it was just pure frustration and disappointment in that first series against the Marlins. And that's how the season ended. Frustration, disappointment, lack of hitting. It's something I just thought about.
Yeah, the opening pitch, you hit for a home run, and then the rest of that game is a struggle. And it's a terrible team. Yeah.
Yep. But more Cubs talk will come as time goes on. It's just right now it's just kind of a matter of moving on.
Absolutely. But I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody for listening. Please make sure you follow us on social media at ShyFanPat1, at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or the TuneIn app. And your job is to share this podcast with one friend you have that likes Chicago sports. And thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go berry.